Alrighty, so we got chapter 6 of the Youth Specialist Manual today. That is going to be chapter 8 in the 6th edition NASM, or chapter 15 in the 7th edition NASM. But we are going to take a look at cardiovascular or cardiorespiratory training today. Oh. What? Hold on one second. Arlene is texting me. She's saying that it needs a passcode. She might have I think you might have the wrong number, Arlene. Sorry, we're having trouble getting into class. Oh, there it is. Wait for it here just to see. Connect with the audio. There we go. What's up, Arlene?
Sorry, I entered one digit wrong. Sorry.
That sounds about. I was like, I don't think we have a passcode.
Oh, it threw me off too. Sorry.
No sweat. So cardiorespiratory training, obviously a very good foundation for introducing youths to exercise. We've kind of talked about this when we were talking about the beginning of this course, and how like youths tend to be pretty much good at aerobic exercise, and that's kind of it. They're not so terrific at the anaerobic stuff. So there's not going to be quite as much interval training or interval approaches when you're looking at cardio for youths. That being said, I definitely want to go over interval training with you guys and talk about anaerobic cardio because it is still very much a huge part of the sort of regular training approach. So we are going to look at that today, even though you will notice that there's certain things that we say today, kind of like yesterday, that are not necessarily in the PowerPoints. But so we know that we're going to talk about how like childhood obesity is on the rise, and obviously cardiovascular exercise can be a really good way to combat that. We know that there's sort of rising in risks of like certain chronic diseases associated with sedentary lifestyles. That's also something that we can sort of improve through like regular exercise. And again, youths tend to be particularly good at cardiovascular exercise. So if we're trying to capitalize on someone's strengths, then this is a really good way to sort of do that. Cardio can be really practical and easy to implement, but it can also be really, really, really fun. And I know that when I say that last one, I'm sure there are some people out there right now who are like, I've done no version of cardio that is fun. But you got to remember, if we're talking about training kids, cardio can be playing games or like, practicing like sports. That is very much like a really good time for like a lot of youths. So that is sort of what we are going to see a lot of today. So our objectives is that we want to understand the rationale behind cardiorespiratory training, the guidelines for getting it into a program, and then talk about how to actually develop a cardiorespiratory program. Hopefully you guys have a good approach to that by the end of today. So rationale behind this, obviously, like I said, we know that we are seeing sort of epidemic levels when it comes to obesity in children. This has been on the rise for several years now. Reasons for it are obviously they're obviously going to be very complex. We're not going to just boil it down to be like, oh no, McDonald's has got good marketing. It's certainly not just that, but it's sort of a combination of poor nutrition and likely increased in like sedentary lifestyles. And I think a lot of times, like I've heard people sort of jump to the conclusion where they're like, well, they're cutting after school programs and kids aren't being, they don't have as much access to physical activity as they used to. And I think that's absolutely true. I'm not going to take away from that argument at all. But I think, saying that is really the only reason that we're seeing more obesity amongst youths nowadays, I think that is a little short-sighted. I think that it is that, and then also just an increase in or a decrease in the little bits of physical activity. Um, One of the reasons why obesity is sort of on the climb, in my opinion, is the fact that like we just live in a very convenient world. I mean, technology is amazing nowadays, and it's very easy to sort of go through your life. Um, and so that is just decrease. We're seeing a small decrease in like 5 less calories to do this chore that it used to be. We got Roombas to do our vacuuming for us. We've got dishwashers. We got all this like amazing tech, which makes our life easier, but sort of in the end kind of makes our life harder in a lot of ways when we start to sort of struggle with like obesity, right? And those aren't obviously the only examples. I don't have a Roomba, like not everybody's got that kind of stuff, but I think that is sort of highlighting what I mean when I talk about like an increasingly technological world. It's great, it really is kind of convenient. But if we're looking just simply at like energy discrepancies, like that's a big difference. Throw her under the bus right now, but my girlfriend was just talking about like needing to do a little bit more cardio in her life because when she lives in New York, you walk everywhere. Like there's no driving in New York. So you walk to the subway, then you walk to the next subway, and you walk to the next subway. And then now she's feeling like she doesn't have as much like endurance out here because now it's like we drive to wherever we're going. Hop on the 405 and head down to Santa Monica. Get on the 101, head down to Hollywood, rather than walking over to the subway, grabbing the subway. Like those little differences. That's a big energy discrepancy. We do see some substantial changes there in our lifestyles and stuff. So so that's obviously going to increase our risk of obesity. And then we know obesity is associated with like a lot of different diseases, right? Particularly abdominal obesity is sort of the most dangerous. That is the one that we're sort of the most worried about. Like if you have a high body fat percentage, but it's like, if it's evenly distributed, it's oddly healthier. It's a little bit more okay than abdominal fat in particular, which sort of surrounds all of our vital organs and starts having its own metabolism in really weird ways and doing some very interesting but not so good for us stuff. So cardiorespiratory training is one of our approaches for this, and it's certainly not the only approach. I think one of the problems with talking about cardio and then immediately talking about like obesity. So here's the thing, like you do not only like it's not that like cardio is the way to like burn the most amount of fat. Cardio is the best way to burn like a significant and steady, which I think is some of the value amount of calories, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's like burning more fat than like working out, lifting weights and things like that. So when I say cardio, I don't want you guys to just think, going for a run, getting on a spin bike, hitting the elliptical, getting on a Stairmaster. Like that's not necessarily what we mean when we say cardio. Cardio is just anything that elevates your heart rate to specific levels over like a specific amount of time. That's what we mean when we say cardiorespiratory training. So we're going to be a little more expansive about our definition here. And then, now that we can sort of expand and grab some other stuff and throw it in there, is it the best way to lose weight? It certainly can be, because it is a substantial calorie burn that's easy to track, which is some of the highest value when it comes to some of the biggest, like most value that you get from cardio training is that's just easy to sort of calculate. And so it'll decrease our risk of all those diseases that we're talking about. It also positively influences our mood. There's a reason why obviously like weightlifters also very much get addicted to, going to the gym and working out regularly, right? I think probably most people in this call have some sort of, sort of call to get to the gym, but like obviously that's going to have very positive impacts on your mood and stuff. But cardio in particular does sort of flood the system with like a lot of endorphins and is very good for that. So it has been shown to be very good for mood. a lot of negative psychological feelings and stuff that is associated with a sedentary lifestyle starts to sort of melt away when we are more physically active. It can be used to improve our self-esteem. Remember, we talked about the psychology of feelings of self-worth. One of the best ways to do that is to have higher feelings of self-efficacy. So when you do cardio, there's a lot of milestones in a cardio routine, no pun intended, but like, yeah, when you can sort of reach that first, quarter mile, and then you reach that first half mile without, having to slow down. And then you run your mile time, and then your mile time gets a little bit shorter, or you're able to get up a hill, like all those things are like accomplishments that make you feel very, very good, you know? Um, and obviously it improves our overall health. So yeah, so that is our cardiorespiratory system. Like I said, this is going to be our heart, blood, and blood vessels. That's the main thing that we're sort of spending our time contracting and moving around. And then our respiratory system, which is your respiratory pump and passageways, are constantly bringing in that vital nutrient, aka oxygen, to allow us to metabolize things. And literally do everything that it is that we do. So one of the reasons why cardio just sort of improves your endurance and energy in general is because of all of those cardiorespiratory system development that we're sort of talking about here, and it's great. Like that is, that's a good feeling to have. So now when it comes to recommending cardio, NASM is going to use, and I know you guys have seen this a bajillion times, but today we're really going to kind of break them down. NASM really recommends using what is called the FIT principles. And what's funny about the FIT principles is they're not actually a NASM concept. This is actually something that every personal trainer has to learn. I think that I don't know when the FIT principles were sort of introduced, but they have been adopted literally by everyone. And when it comes to like the rules that, like the NASM test was created, by experts in the industry, or the personal training test. Was created, like that's the CPT, the certified personal trainer, right? And I think that like this is something that was introduced back then. And so like if you become like an ACE trainer, you have to be familiar with the FIT principles. If you become an ISSA trainer, you got to be familiar with the FIT principles. Like it's something that all of us in the industry kind of use, even though it's not necessarily like there's not any like rules or super specific guidelines, which to me is very funny. You would think that the thing that is sort of introduced by everybody would be a little bit more rule based. But here's how I like to use the FIT principles. Honestly, they are guiding principles. Like they're exactly what they sound like, right? They are general guidelines that are there. And if you can just keep this in the back of your head, if you can just continually like, I'm going to make this routine, I'm going to put my client through this routine, and you just keep it in the back of your head that you want to consider all of these aspects, right? These 5 main things, and just make sure all the pieces kind of fit together. It's going to be a great way for you to create fun, but also effective cardiorespiratory routines. So these aren't going to be necessarily like a number of sets or a number of reps or anything like that. That's not what the FIT principles are. They are just sort of general guidelines that are very, very good principles to sort of like, live your life by, I'm not like super on the hype train for the guy. But like you think about like, you ever read any of those books like Jordan Peterson's got one that's like the X number of rules for life. It's like they're just sort of general ways to kind of do things, right? One of my favorite like little mini books, I think Chris, remind me, I think we were talking about this, but there's this little tiny book that's like, it's like that thin, and it's like a pocket book, and it's literally just like a little story of this ex-Navy SEAL who it's called Make Your Bed, and that's the book, and it's just like, hey, take the time to like make your bed every single day, I was talking about that with somebody in class. I can't remember who I was talking about it with. But it's just a general principle. And if you do that, it kind of like you accomplish something first thing in the morning, and that lights your brain up because you're like, I did it. I did a thing successfully already. Just think about how many other successful things I can do today. And it's a really good way to kind of like positively move forward in your life, and with optimism and efficiency. That's what the fit principles are kind of like. They're just like general guidelines that you kind of want to follow, little things to make writing a cardio routine easier. So they're guidelines that help us create not only like effective, but also safe and fun routines. So the first thing you should always be considering when you are writing a cardiorespiratory routine is the frequency. So like the other day I was asking my girlfriend, I was like, hey, you want to get a new routine, and I was like, what's, first off, like what's important? And she was like, want to have more energy to go hiking. And I was like, great. And I was like, so in that case, like, what do you think like a good schedule would look like that you can start implementing, to increase your activity? And she was like, I could probably work out like, 5 days a week, I think is a good like thing. And I was like, awesome, love 5 days a week. Let's go for it, And so we set it up as, a little bit of strength training, a little bit of cardio, and like, some yoga, because that's something that she really likes, right? So that's sort of like, when I'm considering like putting her workout routine together, I'm going to consider the frequency. And so this is basically measured in like a weekly situation. It's the number of training sessions you're getting in a given time period. Typically that time period is 1 week. So my workout schedule that I like to follow would look something kind of like this, without even just sort of like, if I'm implementing cardio into my routines, it would look something like this, right? If I go like a little 7-day table here, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, right? So just, what's important to me is having enough energy to sort of like play like the sports that I want to play and have the endurance to do that, right? So I'm gonna have like primarily like strength training, because that's my favorite thing that I'm sort of prioritizing. And so I'll have like a workout A on like Mondays and Thursdays. And then I'll have like a workout B on Wednesdays and Fridays. And then I like to have like cardio on Wednesdays and Saturdays. And that's where I go and play sports and stuff. And then Sundays, I just like to recover. I really like to kind of rely on Sunday as just like a day of rest. So that's sort of just like one approach. This is what I like to do, Other people, they have like a little bit of a different approach. They might go with like, maybe they do 6 days of lifting per week. They go A, then B, C, A, B, C. And then what they do is they just do like a little bit of a double session of cardio, right? Where maybe there's a little bit of extra cardio, where it sort of looks something like this, plus cardio, on like Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays, or we'll say Fridays, right? So there's sort of a basic approach. They do 20 minutes of extra cardio at the end of those sessions. That's probably more of a muscle building routine. If I had to guess, somebody who's like, that's probably somebody who is trying to put on muscle mass. I would assume, that's sort of what that looks like to me. I'm trying to get right. Yeah, whatever. Not that important. And then there's other ones too, right? You might have like a much more cardio based athlete, right? So maybe they have something that's like A, B, C. This is a kind of a classic weight loss routine, in my opinion. So they might rest there, and then they got like cardio, cardio, cardio. I think that also is, I think that's kind of the classic. A lot of times we see that. Or like, it doesn't even necessarily have to be ABC. This is like your classic like chest, shoulders, tries, back, biceps, and then here's like leg day. That's the every magazine you pick up is going to have routines like that, right? But this doesn't have to look like this. This could just be, it could be workout A every single time. If you create like a total body routine, You could do something like that, or you could do A, B, C, and all three of them could be total body routines, and then this is just different exercises every time. Or maybe you do like something that sort of shifts it like that. You go A, B, A, and then next week you do exactly the same thing, except that it's B, cardio, A, cardio, and then B, and maybe your routine looks something like that, either way, like we're seeing the frequency here, right? Like I like a 2-day frequency. This is a 3-day frequency. This is a 3-day frequency that looks a little bit different. And so that's sort of the different approach. Or maybe you just go to like 5 days of group exercise classes per week. And it's a lot of cardio every single time, or Orange Theory or CrossFit even. CrossFit is often very cardio based. They throw a lot of like strength training in there as well. But, so frequency is the number of training sessions. It's usually in a week-long like period, right? Your classic sort of marathon schedule, a lot of times you'll have in the beginning is like the beginning of the week. Let's say it's let's say somebody is not implementing any strength training, right? Or maybe they're taking a very limited strength training approach. And so, let's open that back up again, actually. Let's say they're taking a pretty limited strength training approach. And so their schedule might look something like this. Oh, I put this in the wrong spot. Nah. What's up, David?
Good morning.
Let's put Sunday over here. Yeah, so there's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So it might, maybe instead they're really, really emphasizing like the cardio approach. So they might have like an interval run here. They might have like a hill run here. And they might have like a long run here. And that long run is on Saturdays because like that's the day that they really have, and they're definitely going to recover like the next day. That's where they're really trying to increase their mileage. They might even also do like a day of rest right before that. So they have 2 days of rest, and then this is like strength training here, and this is strength training here. So this would very much be, this would be a pretty good schedule for like a marathoner. And basically you would just up your weekly mileage every single week leading up to the marathon until you're hitting it right around like 20-22 miles. Ironically, what's weird about like marathon training, this is gonna sound kind of weird, but you don't always have to train to 26 miles. You don't actually have to train to the full marathon distance. You kind of just get yourself really close to it, and then you sort of do it at the end there. So this would be a very cardio approach, right? Like this would be, you'd have cardio like 3 days per week with 2 days of strength training, right? So we'll put those cardio days in blue and strength training days in red. And then maybe we'll put like our rest days in green here, right? So now we can really kind of see a different approach there that's really much more based around cardio. So, again, frequency, the number of training sessions in the given time period. You guys will want to have that definition sort of memorized up here. If they, if you get a question on your homework or on your exam that says something like frequency is the blank frequency refers to, and then you get 4 options. It would be the number of training sessions in a given time period, or they might give you a question that's like the F in FIT principle stands for, and the answer is frequency. They can word things any variation of that. Next one we got to look at is intensity. Now, I would say intensity is probably the most important part of the FIT principles. We want to start by considering frequency, but it will sort of be informed by, or it will inform our intensity. So frequency and intensity are very, very intertwined because you cannot have a lot of both of them. You can, but you are asking to get injured. You are handcrafting a program that will injure you in some capacity, right? And we certainly don't want to do that. So intensity refers to the level of demand placed on the body during physical activity, right? So this is typically measured, like our favorite way to measure this is going to be as a percentage of your heart rate max. So in the same way that if I were making somebody lift at a percentage of one rep max, right? Let's say like percent 1 RM ranges. Let me see, like just get like a infographic here. Yeah, so here's like sort of a classic infographic describing, what the various rep ranges and intensities are used for. If you're going for maximum strength, your reps should be below 6. If you're trying to gain strength, you want to keep your reps somewhere below 6, and you're probably going to do a lot of sets. If you're going for muscular size, like hypertrophy, you want to keep your intensity somewhere between 60 and 85%, according to this. NASM disagrees with that. NASM is going to say 75 to 85%. But your rep range is going to be 6 to 12. And then if you're going for endurance, you want to keep your rep range, above 13, and you want to keep your intensity below 67%, because like that's going to correspond with 13 reps, right? So there's a connection here between intensity, right, a percentage of 1 rep max, and training volume, right? Similarly to how if we're looking at volume in cardio, that's where our frequency is coming in, right? You're not necessarily calculating sets times reps to figure out the volume when it comes to cardio. Instead, you're just sort of looking at duration times frequency, right? It's like go for 20 minutes, 3 days a week. Okay, great. Or go for 60 minutes twice per week, whatever it happens to be. That's how your frequency and your intensity is gonna match up. So intensity is the level of demand. We cannot have high intensity and high frequency. If we do, we're going to get a stress fracture, we're going to get shin splints, low back problems, plantar fasciitis, all kinds of those sort of running injuries that we tend to think of. And obviously part of those running injuries are also oftentimes like, inadequate form and stuff. But it could also just be overtraining. Our favorite way to measure this is definitely going to be the percent heart rate max. That's definitely going to be the most accurate, right? So you guys will remember from Friday, we talked about calculating out someone's heart rate max, right? So if we go to a Carvenin calculator here, let's say I've got a 38-year-old client, 38 in there, whose resting heart rate is 73 beats per minute. So I hit 73 and I hit calculate here. Skip this first part because that's the old method. And down here, there's our Carvenin formula, right? So let's say I want them, let's go back to that, did I close it like a dummy? No, I didn't. Okay, let's go back to our little marathon routine here that we were creating. And let's talk about like what these different runs are gonna look like. I've got an interval day here, I've got a hill day here, and I've got a long run here, right? So now I can sort of like look at this from a cardio perspective based specifically on my client. I did my fitness assessment. I calculated out their ranges, right? Their heart rate should be anywhere from 65%, that's going to be 144 beats for this client, to 95%, that's going to be 177 beats. So I'm going to create some type of routine that works within this big range here, right? So on my long runs, this is real simple, right? Their workout's going to look like this. It's going to be like, zone, we'll say Z1 for zone 1. That's going to be 65 to 75% of their heart rate max. So zone 1, and I want them to go, because it's a long run, I'm going to give them like a certain amount of mileage, right? So let's say like the first day, I'm just going to say 5 miles, right? And then next week, I'd maybe bump it up to 6, and we're going to build our way up all the way to sort of a marathon's distance here. And then when I say zone 1, what I mean is 65 to 75% of their heart rate max. And that's the only thing they're going to use. So I'm going to say that their target heart rate is 144 to 155 beats per minute. So there's our long run, right? It's 144 to 155 beats per minute. You know, I'm just gonna, there's not quite enough space in this cell. What I'm gonna do is cut this down here, and we'll just indent, make that a little bigger and bolder. We'll say Monday interval runs, Wednesday hill runs, and we'll say Saturday. So if I'm doing this, I'm talking about those long runs. There's all my rules, right? I'm going to keep them in zone 1. Which is that 65 to 75% heart rate max. And there's sort of my guiding principles here for how we're going to run our Saturday, right? Not too bad, like pretty simple, right? But then let's say I need to design like a program for we're going to sort of work our way backwards. Let's say Wednesday, we're trying to get used to like doing hills and plugging away at hills. So, you know, what would work really well would be like a medium intensity interval routine, not like super high intensity intervals, but like enough to kind of build up their endurance on that Wednesday situation. So I might do something that looks like this. I'm going to say zone 1 and 2, right? And so that's going to be anywhere, actually it says zone 2/1. That way we're putting the emphasis on zone 2. That's really where we want to train. And so we'll say that's anywhere from 65 to 85% heart rate max, right? Because zone 2 is 76 to 85%, right? Zone 1 is still that 65 to 75. So let's say I'm still going to do like, I'm not going to do quite as many miles here because this is a lot more intense, right? So we'll take this mileage down to 3 miles here. And what I want them to do is, you know, if they were like a really serious marathoner, they're probably going to have like a GPS watch, right? And so I'm going to have them sort of track that mileage, take them out to like a really big long hill. My favorite spot to do this is actually like Fryman Canyon, just up on Laurel Canyon. That's confusing, but Fryman Canyon is my favorite place to do this because it's got a really big, long, you know, it's basically one big hill. And so what we're going to have our client do is we are going to have them run. We'll put this in just sort of a description here, right? We're going to have them run uphill and we'll say, let's say 60 seconds, right? And then turn around and jog/walk for 2 minutes, recovery. Okay, so they're going to do a program where they run for 60 seconds uphill, turn around and walk back for 2 minutes. They're not going to probably in that 2 minutes get back to where they started. They will probably get further on the run than they will. So what's going to happen is they'll sort of get to here and then they'll come back maybe to here. Then they'll get up to here and then they'll come back maybe to here. And eventually they're just going to work their way sort of zigzagging up that hill very slowly. So getting more specific about that and giving my client like a target heart rate, right, might look something like this, where I say, you know, 1 minute at, and that's going to be anywhere from, I go over here and look at the 76 to 85%. So that's 156 to 166 beats per minute, right? And then 2 minutes at 144 to 155 beats per minute, right? Let's go ahead and adjust that slightly. So there's sort of how our routine is shaping up. We have sort of a medium interval day on that Wednesday, right? That's sort of the medium intensity. And then we got to do Monday. Monday is like the really high intensity stuff, right? So this is where our intensity is really starting to climb. This is going to be zone Zone 3, -2 and /1. Like we're going to use zones 3, 2, and 1 to sort of recover, right? And so maybe here I will also only do maybe 3 miles, right? I'm not going to be super intense about it. And what this is going to be is we'll do, this is going to get a little bit complicated, but we're going to perform, let's say, equal amounts of work / recovery. Start with a, let's say, 30-second sprint, followed by 30 seconds recovery, then 60-second sprint, followed by 60 seconds recovery. And actually, you know what, let's make that 45. And finally, we'll do 60 seconds sprint. Finally, 60 second sprint with 60 seconds recovery. Right. So now I'm really getting super specific about how I'm giving my client these intense intervals, right? And so it might look something like this, right? 45 seconds at, and again, we're going to go zone 3 here, right? So that's 85 to 95% their heart rate max, 166 to 177, or I said 167 to 177 beats per minute. And then 45 seconds at, and this is their recovery, right? And we go back to 144 to 155 beats per minute. And then we are going to have, oh, that was supposed to be 30 first. Sorry. 30, 45 seconds. Let me just sort of repeat this. And there we go, right? Now, this is sort of the, this is going to be your marathon routine here, right? So they do a really intense, like zone 3 sprint that is going to super exhaust them. And then we let them recover in zone 1 for 30 seconds, right? And then we get their intensity right back up into that 45 seconds, and then we recover for 45. So we do 30-second sprint, 30-second recover, 45-second sprint, 45-second recover, 60-second sprint, 60-second recover, start back at the top. And you're just going to do that until you hit 3 miles, right? And that is going to be sort of like how we do it. And then next week, we might change that to 3.5 miles, and that to 3.5 miles, maybe change that to like 6 miles. And then the week after that, it becomes 4 miles, 4 miles, and 7 miles. And eventually we work our way up to a marathon's distance, right? This is very similar to routines that I've given. Like, you know, if I've had students who are going into like, you know, they've got like friends or family who are training for like, you know, the police cardiorespiratory test or whatever. This is one of my all-time like favorite routines. Now, obviously, I've got very specific heartbeats listed here, right? But it would be totally different for a different client. If my client was, you know, 22 years old with a resting heart rate of, you know, 65 beats per minute, you know, their zone 1 is going to be 151 to 165. Right. So instead of 144 to 155, that number goes up a little bit because their heart rate is going to be naturally, you know, able to push a little bit harder. Right. So that's a big difference there. There's going to be, you know, different aspects on how to do this, but that is sort of the intensity thing there, right? As the intensity climbs, my frequency has to go down. If I were to only do this interval thing every single time, right? You know, it's like I've only got it listed as 3 miles here. I've got 5 miles down here, right? That's it's a much longer run because they're doing low intensity. They're only staying in zone they're only staying in zone 1. Whereas up here, they're taking it all the way up to zone 3, which can be very, very, very intense. So frequency and intensity are inversely related in everything that we do. So typically our favorite way to measure this is going to be using the heart rate max, kind of like I laid out over here. But let's say your client doesn't have a heart rate monitor. Let's say they don't want to be jogging and like trying to, time it with like a stopwatch and measure their heart rate that way. Not that it's actually not really that hard. We all did it before the good heart rate monitor watches came out. But let's just say that they want to, they don't want to do that. Well, one thing that you can also do to measure that sort of zone 1, zone 2, zone 3 is you can use what is called the Borg scale. And that's over here on the right. So the Borg scale is a very weird scale of 6 to 20 that basically measures intensity. So 6 is like no exertion at all. 6 is like, you're sitting on the couch. And then exercise is going to start right around like a 12 or 13. That's going to be like our zone 1. That's going to be sort of our endurance cardio. You'd be warming up in like maybe a 10 to 11. So maybe even up to a 14, but really just like a 12 to 13 is going to be your zone 1. So you would tell your client like, hey, on a scale of like 6 to 20, I want you about at like a 12 or 13. I want you kind of halfway, a little under like halfway, max effort, right? And then like, let's say I want them to do sort of a zone 2 approach. Well, then maybe I give them like a 14 to a 16, right? Make it a little bit harder. And then maybe if I want them in zone 3, I would say like a 17 or an 18. I don't really ever have to take my client up to 19 or 20. I don't need them to necessarily like vomit at the end of a run, Now, obviously the freaking Borg scale is really weird to use. I can't believe that they still keep it around. The reason why is because like the reason it's 6 to 20, which is dumb, is because like a 6 would be like the lowest resting heart rate, and like 220 would, it sort of corresponds with 60 beats per minute. And like 20 kind of corresponds like 22 beats per minute. Or I'm sorry, 200 beats per minute. And so like if you think of like a 20-year-old person, which is probably what this was originally based on, that's generally a good range. But honestly, most people will use what we call just like the modified Borg scale. And so the modified Borg scale, which is so much easier to use, would look like this, actually, where's the NASA approach? There we go. So you can see our 3 zones here, right? You would say that like, I want you somewhere between like a 10 or 11, right? Or a 13 to 4. Oh no, that's the original. Sorry, I want you somewhere around like a 3 to 4 or a 5 to 6 or a 7 to 8 out of 10 in terms of maximum effort. I don't really ever want my client at like a full 9 or 10. So that's the Borg scale. Just so you guys know, it is also sometimes called the RPE scale. That's the rating of perceived exertion scale. Now, that is often a homework question, and it is often asked on your NASM exam. And it will usually sound something kind of like this. They'll say the blank is a method for prescribing exercise intensity based on the perception of maximum effort. So it's based on the perception of maximum effort. Therefore, it's the rating of perceived exertion, or RPE scale, or they'll call it after the guy. They'll call it the Borg scale. So it's not necessarily a trick question, guys, but this is one of those types of like information that has like 3 different names. And I do hate it when NASM does that. That drives me a little crazy when they do that. But that one's not really on them. That's not necessarily their fault. This thing, they didn't invent the RPE scale. Does that make sense, guys? Any questions on that? Everybody clear on the RPE scale and the Borg scale?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm good.
Yeah, that I find this to be particularly confusing sometimes when you hear it. Cyrus, how you feeling about that? Uh-oh.
I'm trying to find it.
No sweat.
On mute, so.
Yeah. But pretty good on that?
Yes, sir.
Cool. So yeah, so that's our Borg scale. And then the other method that we've got, guys, that you can use to measure intensity. Let's go back to our sort of zone 1, zone 2, zone 3 situation here, right? And again, like this could correspond with the Borg scale, right? I could always just say my long run is, you know, on the that's a 12 to 13 on the Borg scale. You know what I mean? Like go back to this 12 to 13 on the Borg scale. Cool. That totally works, right? Or I could say like 12 to 13 on the Borg scale for recovery slash, I should put recovery second. So I could say like 14 to 16 on the Borg scale for work, 12 to 13 for recovery. You know, like I could do that instead of heart rates, you know. And then lastly, I've got the talk test method, right? The talk test method is also a way for us to measure intensity without having to necessarily place a number on it. And this is literally based on your client's ability to keep their breath. You know, when I tell someone that I want them to run a hard interval, I will often describe it as like, I want you out of breath at the end of the set. I don't want you breathing hard. I want you out of breath, you know? So I'll describe it that way and they go, oh, okay, great. And then they really push themselves, you know, which is exactly what I want in sort of a zone 3 situation, right? Whereas like, let's say I want my client to recover. It's like, hey, I want you to continue doing cardio, but you should be able to hold a conversation pretty comfortably. If you can't get all the way through your ABCs, you know, and like say the entire alphabet without like taking like a little break in between, I think you're working too hard. I want you in sort of a recovery mode instead, right? So that is going to be the talk test method. And so we're going to work somewhere between that and that. And then in the middle, it would be like, I want you to breathe. And like, if you get a little out of breath, you might need to take like a little pause here and there where you're breathing. You might find it a little bit difficult to talk. But like, it should still be possible to kind of get through a sentence. So the talk test method breaks it down into 3 zones as well. Zone 1, you can maintain a conversation the whole time. Zone 2, it should be pretty difficult to talk, but not impossible. Zone 3, it should be like, no, there are no words coming out of here. If any words try to come out of here, that word will be yak. You know, that's sort of the 3 zone approach there, right? So that's how we're going to sort of implement intensity with our clients. There's a lot of different methods here. And again, I use sort of a building up marathon example here. Not everybody's going to need to do that, you know. This could also just be very much implemented in like a rowing machine situation, right? Doesn't have to be running, you know. I could say like Monday is your intensity interval day where you're really ripping really hard and you kind of recover, then you rip really hard, and then you recover. Wednesday is sort of just like a medium, where it's like sort of a 1-to-1 recovery situation where it's like equal amounts of rest, equal amounts of work, 60 seconds on, 60 seconds off, 60 seconds on, 60 seconds off, right? That's sort of a medium intensity interval. And then like just a general, gentle, just like, hey, throw a movie on, get through an episode of TV, you know, whatever it is, sort of low intensity, you know, kind of keep it going. So those are sort of our 3 different ways of implementing cardio routine. So I consider it to be like zone 1 or stage 1 is very much like steady state cardio, which by the way is what we're going to focus on with kids, because again, that's training our aerobic system. And then you have sort of the medium intensity interval training, which is going to be implemented with like a lot of athletes. And that's going to be really good for, you know, building up a little bit of endurance, but also like a little bit of like higher intensity work. That's sort of the medium intensity interval training. And then we've got our true like HIIT training, high intensity interval training, where we're taking the intensity really, really high, and then, recovering very, very low. Big waves there, right? So we can even look at that in terms of just to kind of highlight this one last time. Let's see here, interval training methods. See if I can find that. I don't have to make one. So it might look something like this, right? You can see the yellow bar represents like steady state cardio. It's at a really low intensity and just kind of maintains that the entire time. There's a medium interval intensity approach, which goes a little bit higher, but then like back to normal, and then a little bit higher and then back to normal, right? Right there, maybe a little bit below the bar to fully recover, and then that allows you to push a little higher. And then there's the true high intensity interval training, which is like really getting the intensity up super high and bringing it back down. And so that's the difference between steady state cardio, HIIT training, and maximum intensity training, or I like to call it steady state cardio, medium interval training, high intensity interval training. But that's sort of what the difference there is, right? And obviously, one other thing, if you look at this chart, look at the term in terms of times. Maybe we can only do about, like, you really should only be doing about 20 minutes of super intense interval training. Like if you're getting really intense, you really should keep that duration down 20 minutes, medium intensity. Yeah, you maybe take it out to 30 minutes. And then if you want to do like an hour of cardio that's like low intensity, great, go for it, but that's low intensity. So you can do an hour. So there's frequency and intensity. Those are like the most important, like probably the most important. Time is the length of time spent in a given activity. This is obviously also part of like intensity and frequency, right? Time is the duration, right? Recommended activity level for most people should be about 150 minutes a week of the low intensity exercise. If you can do that, if you can get that 150 minutes a week, low intensity, physical activity, that has been shown to be enough to really reduce some of the risks associated with sedentary lifestyles. So even just that little amount has been shown to have really positive benefits. Let's say you want to go a little higher on the intensity, you only need about 75 minutes a week. So, let's say you go play something like maybe a low intensity but somewhat cardio based sport. If you can get like 150 minutes a week of like, I don't know, pickleball or something like that in per week, great. Like that's enough physical activity to kind of stave off and fight off a lot of the negative effects of a sedentary lifestyle. And if you that's 30 minutes a day, or maybe it's just like 3 1-hour sessions per week, it's not really that difficult to get that in. And then if you get really high intensity about it, let's say you do some sprints and stuff, you really only need like one high intensity session per week to really get some of those benefits. 75 minutes of moderate to high intensity activity can have the same benefit. Now, with kids, this is going to look very different. Those are our adult recommendations. And by the way, if you're going to memorize something, that's what I want you to memorize. 150 minutes a week, moderate to low intensity. 150 minutes a week, low intensity. 75 minutes a week, moderate to high intensity. That's the CDC recommendations on physical activity. That's what you're going to be tested on. Because again, NASA is sort of proving that we know all the US government rules on stuff. With kids, it's different. With kids, we want way more physical activity. Again, they're metabolic non-specialists. They're good at endurance, low intensity cardio. So would you do a routine like this for a kid? Absolutely not. Honestly, you would do this. You would just keep it to zone 1 every single time. Long duration, endurance-based cardio, right? We recommend for kids 60 minutes of daily activity every single day, right? This is where, any of you guys who are like NFL fans, right? The NFL Play 60 initiative, right? This is where that comes from. It's the idea that like we know kids should be getting at least an hour of physical activity, like that's kind of fun, playing around every single day. If they can get even more than that, great. You know, we encourage it, but 60 minutes is sort of the recommendation in terms of like physical activity. And not a lot of kids get that. If we look at like, you know, I took you to this website recently, the state of obesity activity levels. I'm sorry, youth activity levels. Where is it? This one. Oh, I can't. Where is it? I can't find this darn thing. But basically, we are seeing like a very low percentage of kids. Very low percentage of kids were getting the recommended physical activity amounts. So we definitely want to see at least 60 minutes a day with like our youths and stuff. So that is going to be sort of the time aspect here, right? And again, you cannot have high intensity and high time, right? You can't have high duration. So, you know, we look at this chart here. You're high in, if you're doing maximal intensity interval, guys, it really should only be about 20 minutes. You know, medium intensity, yeah, maybe take it up to 30 minutes if you want. But then if you're doing steady state cardio, you can get, you know, fairly long with the duration. I wouldn't go crazy, you know, but that's how that's going to work. So next thing we're going to look at is type. So now we've got frequency, intensity, time. The next T in the FIT principles is going to be type. Type is the choice of activity being performed. This is probably the easiest one to understand, but there's obviously a lot of different choices between your different clients. Me, I like running, you know. Somebody in this call right now, you might be a swimmer. Somebody else might be like jump roping, you know. Everybody's going to have the type of cardio that they sort of prefer. But basically the choice can be different depending on who it is. But it should just be anything that elevates your heart rate for certain durations of time is considered cardio. Running, hiking, biking, swimming, jumping rope, or if you hate all of that, do circuit training, right? Look, let's see, body weight circuit. Just as simple as it gets here on the internet, right? There's one with the Superman's logo. Let's see if it's any good, you know, like, so you do, how do they got this set up? 40 high knees, 20 fly steps, 20 squats, 10 push-ups, elbow plank, arm lifts, mountain climbers, star plank, Supermans. And you do 10 sets of it. The 10 sets, that's actually a lot. Yeah, there you go. There's your cardio, you know. Station 1, station 2, 3, 4, 5, up to station 9 there, repeat for 10 full sets. There's your circuit training, right? It really doesn't have to be super complicated. There's a lot of super people out there, like superhero based ones. So it doesn't have to be super complicated. Now, I would encourage you to make the circuit, you know, like use your NASM approach here, but that's a really fun, engaging way to do your cardio that doesn't feel like cardio, you know. Again, yesterday my girlfriend and I worked out. It was great. I put a little cardio kettlebell routine together, something that was simple and easy to sort of learn, but got the heart rate nice and elevated because, again, she wants to improve her endurance for like hiking and stuff. Great. You know, let's go kettlebells. So any type of, you know, if we're talking about like youths, or really, honestly, this applies very well to our adults as well. Anything that's unique and fun and engaging is going to be like the real key here. Circuit training is great. Sports type drills are really awesome. That works for youths and for adults, you know. And then you could play games, right? Play some games with your youths, right? That's all of that sort of counts as physical activity. Let's see a sports performance circuit. You know, it might look something kind of like this. Yeah. So here's like a beginner kettlebell routine. Kettlebell swings, goblet squats, alternating reverse lunges, plus push-ups. It's not quite what I was looking for. Let's see, speed ladder circuit. Oh, wait, actually, there it is. Here's like an agility ladder circuit that you could do with kids that would be super, super fun, right? They do a forward hop, they do the icky shuffle, they do a 1 foot shuffle, a straddle hop, in and outs, and then they do one like upper body, they go push-up style. I know some of these names like don't necessarily make sense just yet, but there you go. Like you go through that a couple times, do a couple rounds of that. There's your cardio routine. That's really, really fun. Or here's, getting a little bit of like strength and cardio in, right? Push it. Oh, these are all push-ups and mountain climbers. That's actually brutal. Oh yeah, that sucks. So they go in reverse. 1 push-up and then 10 mountain climbers each, 2 push-ups, 9 mountain climbers each, 8 to 3, 7 to 4, 5. That's actually kind of fun. I like that. So yeah, a lot of different approaches here, just depends on how you want to do it. So that's the type, right? And then lastly, when it comes to fit principles, we've got the enjoyment factor here, right? This is the level of pleasure derived from the activity. Should be fun, guys. Your activity should be engaging. People, again, yeah, they either love cardio or you hate it. I think that honestly, people who say that they hate cardio just aren't doing the right type of cardio. They need to make sure that they are making it not boring, not repetitive, get it challenging, but enjoyable. If you don't have that enjoyment factor in there, nobody's going to stick to their program. And I think that's true of every program that we write. So for youths, enjoyment is a really, really important factor. Your workouts should always be engaging, which is why I love the speed ladder stuff. That's what we're going to practice when we meet up next week. We're going to do some fun speed ladder drills. So any questions on the fit principles? Any questions, comments, concerns?
Oh, no questions.
All right, everybody feeling good. So let's talk about stage training here, or let's talk about like implementing this into our routine, right? So again, cardiorespiratory exercise is anything that's going to elevate your heart rate for extended periods of time. Traditionally, and when I say traditional, I mean old school approach. Step 1, get on the treadmill. See you in an hour. Like traditional sort of approach to cardio, pretty boring. Gave cardio a bad name for decades, So we want to sort of implement some fun, creative strategies to make this cardio a little bit more fun. One of the best ways to do this is to use stage training. So utilizing specific intensities that go high and then low can be a really good way to kind of break up the cardio. It's this approach right here, right? Imagine if you did this just on a treadmill, right? So like Mondays is your intervals where you're doing like sprints and then recovery, right? One of my favorite ones that's actually not this, not the way we laid it out here, but I love like a good treadmill cardio routine. Put it to some incline, get the speed up really, really high, get on there and sprint for 20 seconds, hop your legs off to the side and just rest for 40 seconds and then repeat over and over and over again. Do as many rounds as you can get, work your way up to 20 minutes if you can eventually get there. That will turn you into a cardio machine. Then maybe there's more of like just like a hill approach where you sprint, you're going to jog the whole time, but you go up onto a hill version for 1 minute and then you jog at a regular version for 1 minute, up and down, 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute, but you never stop, right? No pause, you don't have to jump your legs off the whole time. And then the other version, like the long run, just get on there, watch some TV. You know what I mean? That's sort of the long run approach. Maybe you do an hour of cardio, right? So this would maybe be 20 minutes, this would maybe be 30 minutes, and this is like the long hour at the end. Personally, I think this is going to be real boring. That is not my approach to cardio. I don't even like this one. I love this approach. I love the high intensity interval stuff in the gym. But these two I find very boring. So how do we change that one more time? All right, well, on Saturdays, let's go out for a long run, just go for a jog. On Wednesdays, go for a hike up some hills, get that heart rate up based on some incline. And then on Mondays, let's do some like burpees and stuff. Let's get the intensity up, do it in your backyard, or fast jump rope or something that involves like some sprints and stuff. Go to the park and do some sprints, then recover, go some sprints and then recover. There's a lot of different ways to implement this stuff. I'm kind of picking a lot of like running examples. It does not have to be running. It just means stages, right? You can do this on a bike, you can do this on a rower, you can do this on a Stairmaster. There's a lot of different versions out there. So there's our stage training approach. And then the next one we've got is sort of everybody's favorite way to really break up cardio and make it a lot more fun, which is circuit training. So circuit training is like predetermined exercise with little to no rest between each movement. So one of the best ways to do this is just to set up a very simple circuit. Let's say you set up 8 stations here, right? So we got station 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I did not give myself enough space. 7, 8. Not the most even circle in the world, but it is what it is. So maybe this one is like push-ups. Let's call this one like jumping jacks. Let's say this is like body weight squats. We'll do this one as mountain climbers. Let's say this is renegade rows. We'll call this one shoulder taps. Actually, it's gonna be really tough to do that in a row. Split lunges. We'll say this one's shoulder taps. And it's the end of the circuit, so we're gonna get intense. Let's go burpees. We love burpees. And there we go, right? If you did 40 seconds at each station with 20-second transition time, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes to get through the whole thing. Yep, 8 minutes to get through the whole thing. Give them 2 minutes of rest and repeat for 3 rounds, right? So that would be a 30-minute workout. You repeat for 4 rounds, that's a 40-minute workout. You throw like a 10-minute warm-up and a 10-minute cool down in there. You just created a 60-minute boot camp. Pretty simple, right? Honestly, doesn't have to be, you know, fancy, guys. So circuit training is a lot of people's like favorite, you know, fun variations and fun ways to sort of implement that stuff. It makes it very efficient because you get a lot of strength training in with a lot of cardio. You know, it is sort of doing both these things, and it's very easy to perform that in a group setting. You know, again, if I said like 40 seconds work, 20 seconds transition time, 2 minutes recovery between sets, and then perform 4 sets. That is literally a 40-minute workout that we created in, I don't know, under 2 minutes. If I hadn't talked in between. Burns a lot of calories and also ensures that like we're developing plenty of cardio. So circuit training, really fun for kids. I really recommend it with your youths. There's a lot of fun variations of circuit training, by the way. You can do a body weight circuit. This is almost a body weight circuit. I ended up throwing in the renegade rows, ruined it. But this would have been a body weight circuit. Let's just change that to, we got mountain climbers and lunges there. What would go in between? Oh, I don't have any core work in here. Not really. Let's go with the plank. Right, there we go. Mountain climbers to plank will be a little bit rough, but it's not terrible. Or I could change that to a Superman or something. There's a body weight circuit. It's a really fun one, right? Simple, it can be performed anywhere. It doesn't take any equipment. We love that. We could, you know, this version here, lunges into prisoner squats, into push-ups, jumping jacks, mountain climbers, right? There we go. Classic body weight circuit. Very similar to the one I built, actually. I think, honestly, identical to the one I built. Mine's just a little longer. Or we could do a really fun one. We could do a sports agility, speed and quickness, like SAQ circuit as well. So now I'll put this in a different color here, and we'll build a slightly different version. Let's make this, let's say like 2 ins, right? And then we'll make this like a left drill right over here. Which that should be capitalized. Left drill. Let's make this like 1 ins. Let's make this a T drill. We could make this icky shuffle. And then implement, let's say like a box drill. Over here, we will make this, let's see, I got 2 ins. Oh, did I delete my 1 ins? I did. 1 ins, 2 ins, icky shuffle, ollie shuffle is my favorite. And then lastly, 40-meter sprint. Or, yeah, actually, we'll make it a 100-meter sprint because that'll actually take a lot closer to that long. Very simple, right? There's a sports agility circuit, right? Or I could probably actually implement some quickness drills in there if I wanted to. I didn't get any quickness. This is all speed and agility. But that'd be fun, right? In this example, they threw in a little bit of strength training in between. So squat jumps into a 1-ins, into side shuffling, into hopscotch, into a snake drill. Works on power, works on coordination, all kinds of good stuff, right? Or we can do a really weird circuit. We can get into what we call a functional movement circuit. So this is where we do pretty much nothing but full body movements, right? Full body exercises that are usually like a little bit funky, right? Like you can see here, we do like step overs with the hand, right? So you go like, like up and over. So you start here, boop, boop, all the way down, boop, boop, all the way down, right? Just like a little walk over there, or like a squat, step up curl to press, right? So now we'll put that one, we'll put this one in purple. Let's say like a step up curl to press. Let's say this one is a little bit more, we'll go a little more cardio based on this one. So yeah, let's implement like a little bit of, something that's a little simpler. Honestly, let's go back to those body weight, like, stuff. We'll go with like a squat jump, right? And then we'll go over here and do like a reverse lunge to row. So that would have like a resistance band or something like that. And then over here, we'll go with a plank, because I didn't get that in on, I've got to get a little more core work in there. Over here, we'll go with like another functional movement. Let's say a bent deadlift to bent over row. So like they do the deadlift, they do the row, they stand up. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we'll get like a Superman in here. Last one, let's go with like a floor bridge to chest press. It's kind of a fun one. And then lastly, let's get a little bit more core work, and now let's get like a side plank. You know what? Actually, that would have worked really well. I'm going to delete the squat jumps. No, it doesn't necessarily matter, but like I'm going to get more core work in there. Bird dog. So now we got like core movements in, it's going to go like weird, funky combo movement, like a step up to press into a core exercise, funky total body movement, core exercise, right? And there we go. That's our functional movement circuits, right? A push-up with a rotation would have been a good example. The hand walkovers is a good example. Squat to row, reverse lunge to row, squat to press, right? Million different versions out there, right? I go step up curl to press, yeah. So, legs, biceps and shoulders, core, legs and upper back, core, other part of the legs, upper back, core, chest, and glutes, and then core, right? There's a really good one. So now I got 3 different versions. Guess what? I could do this same circuit 3 days. The black text, that's Monday. The red text is Wednesday, and the purple is Friday. And there's a 3-day per week fat loss routine that we built in 15 minutes or so. I run this for 4 weeks. Next 4 weeks, I change it up. And there's a boot camp that I'm literally running, maybe out in the park, 3 days a week, making money. Is it super specific? Not necessarily, I think it could definitely, we got some room in there for some more specificity, but it's not bad. So when it comes to your circuit training, guys, when it comes to creating the stuff, try to get creative, have fun, keep your clients' interests in mind, and keep working towards their goals. But this is literally very similar to, the kind of thing that I set up for my girlfriend. She was asking for a cardio routine where she can get a little bit of strength. And I was like, great. And just put her together, something real simple. And she had a blast. It was fun. We did mostly kettlebell stuff, but it's a good way to go about it. So that is the end of the PowerPoint. I do really quickly want to make sure that we are tying this to the OPT model, because that's what's going to be in your textbook, and that's really going to be what guides us. So yesterday, where is it? We looked at the flexibility stuff. We had our clients in level 1, and we used our corrective flexibility tool bag. Clients in level 2, that's the strength level, we use the active flexibility tool bag. Clients in level 3, our functional flexibility tool bag. Well, guess what? The same thing's going to happen for cardio. For clients who are in stabilization, that's level 1, we're pretty much just going to give them stage 1 cardio routines. Stage 1 has 1 tool in it. That tool bag is 1 tool, and it is zone 1 cardio. 65 to 75% your heart rate max, or maybe like a 12 to 13 on the Borg scale, or we can consider it like, be able to hold a conversation during the talk test, right? So if we look here, clients in level 1, they're going to get they're going to get stage 1, which is just 1 tool, right? Zone 1, that's it. If our clients in level 2, we get a little bit more complicated, right? We can do a stage 2 cardio routine. So if they're in phase 2, 3, or 4, this is the medium intensity intervals, right? We use zone 1 for recovery, and we use zone 2 as our main sort of workhorse, right? That's 76 to 85% of your heart rate max, or 14 to 16 on the Borg scale. And then clients in level 3, we do stage 3, which is a tool bag consisting of 3 tools: zone 3, zone 2, and zone 1. Right? So it kind of builds on itself, right? The first month, you're just doing zone 1. Second month, zone 1 and 2. Third month, zone 1, 2, and 3. It just builds and gets a little bit longer every time, or not a little bit longer, I should say, but a little bit more intense every time, which would actually be the opposite of longer. So here's the thing, guys. Don't think that because your client has graduated to, let's say, like stage 3, they are only doing stage 3 cardio. That's not how we need to approach that. If they're in stage 3, they will want to approach it by implementing a little bit of stage 3 days, but then also stage 2 days and stage 1 days. So very much the approach we took earlier when we built our routine, right? If you look at this, where it says interval run, hill run, and a long run, that translates to the interval run being like stage 3. This translates to being stage 2, and this translates to being stage 1, right? That's basically what we are saying when we're looking at this. And then those strength days would be their own strength days. But those, if this became like the circuit training we're talking about, you can be training your cardio system like crazy, honestly, this is the type of routine I'd probably do with somebody who's becoming like a running athlete. And that's about it, guys. I know a little bit shorter today, but any questions on that? Does that all make sense to everybody?
That makes a lot of sense. So you just want to follow the guidelines.
Love that. Anybody feel like they're gonna, take this routine? Take a screenshot right now. I didn't necessarily write it down to attach it to you guys, but there's a really basic like cardio circuit. I'd probably move some stuff around. We did that so quickly. I'm sure that I'm forgetting certain muscles and stuff. I don't have any lateral movements in here, honestly. Like I'm looking at this, I was like, this needs some transverse and frontal plane movements, but yeah, that is just one way to sort of, implement cardio and really get like a big calorie burn going. Fat loss routine. Any other questions, guys? Y'all feel
I have a question, but it's not. It doesn't have to do with cardio. At least it doesn't have to do with cardio.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So I thought you were gonna say, "Oh no, I don't want to answer."
If I ever do that, fire me.
So what I have, it's like the question I always have is, how would you use this book? Like, how would you use the Trail Guide of Movement? Because I honestly forgot we had that book up until like a week ago, and I was flipping
Yes.
through it, and I was like, because we really don't talk about it, but it's there. So I wanted to know, how would you use that book? Would you just use it as like a guide, pretty much, is like what it says? Would you
It's
just
a
use it?
really good reference for all those kinesiology principles that we talked about in our kinesiology class. So it's a good reference to see what actin and myosin proteins look like. It's a good reference to see sort of where a muscle spindle is and where a Golgi tendon organ is. It helps you sort of see those things. So honestly, like I would read through it. And if you're having a hard time understanding like any specific principle, that book is similar to the way that I use, you know how like I use an analogy every 30 seconds when I'm teaching, I feel like I'm like, it's kind of like, when Superman did this to Lex Luthor, right?
Right.
That's similar to how that book is. It's like, this is a picture of what that looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's got a couple layouts of like where muscles origins and insertions are and stuff. That's sort of what that is.
Okay.
So that's how I would use that book. I'll be honest, David, I am not a huge fan of that book. That's not my favorite. Because I don't think it translates quite as easily.
Yeah, I was looking at it. I mean, it has a bunch of like pictures, and it's really useful because I think the thing it goes over posture, but it goes into like every single kind of posture that's possible. Like it goes
Yeah,
over when people cross their legs, it goes over everything. But the
I
thing
do
is,
like that. Yeah.
it doesn't really like. But the thing I noticed, it doesn't really tell you how to fix anything. It just kind of tells you, oh, they did this, but then
Yes.
it doesn't really give you much more to go off of than
Yeah,
just.
it sure doesn't, which I like as am not a huge fan of.
Yeah. Because it'd just be like, oh, if for example, if they're pronated, they probably said like this, and then that's it. Or it'll be like possible reasons why, but it doesn't really give you an explanation. Like prescriptive stretching, it tells you why and what it should be doing and how to fix it. But
Yep.
I guess
I
it's
like
just a different kind of book, Like
Yeah, that's why I like that book much more. But yeah, that's I don't know. That's a tough that's a kryptonite question for me. But it does. I mean, it's got good examples of common postural distortions. And you can kind of see that book is all about understanding the concept of like form following function, which is my favorite thing to understand. But I don't think we need a whole book for that.
I get you.
All right. Let me kill up this recording here, and then we can let you guys out of here if you need to go.